Good morning, great morning, wonderful morning, spectacular morning, outstanding morning, magnificent morning, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious morning. Again, the beautiful reminder of choice that we all have. And what is that choice about? It's about the meanings that we give things. It's about how we're going to think. Remember, everything is fundamentally meaningless. Everything just is. Nothing is good or bad. It's our thinking that makes it so. Now, think about that for you with whatever it is that you're going through. Everything just is. See, it's what is the meaning that you're going to give, whatever that is, that matters. And that's something that you've got to work on for you in your life, and something that I've got to work on for me in my life. It's something that all of us have to work on in our lives. And what's beautiful is when we have control over that to the point of where we're looking for things to look for the good, to make it seem as something that's happening that might seem negative is actually something to actually help us or grow. That's when everything changes. You see, that's when your vibratory state shifts. And that's important. Why? Because your vibratory state is the attractive force of your life. Think about that. It's the consciousness that you're in, which determines what you go to, what comes to you, what you're repelled by, what's repelled by you. There's a beautiful paragraph in Awaken Imagination by Neville that talks about how, you know, appearances on the outside happen according to what's happening inside. And I want to read this to you because this is amazing. He says, the world presents different appearances according to our states, as our states of consciousness differs. Okay, I misread that. I need to read this correctly here. The world presents different appearances according as our states of consciousness differ. What we see when we are identified with a state cannot be seen when we are no longer fused with it. Now, sit in that for a moment. Let me say that again. What we see when we are identified with a state, see, that's a state of consciousness, that's a frequency, cannot be seen when we are no longer fused with it. By state, it is meant that all man believes and consents to is true. No idea presented in the mind can realize itself unless the mind accepts it. And here he's talking about the subconscious mind. It depends on the acceptance, the state with which we are identified, how things present themselves. In the fusion of imagination and states is to be found the shaping of the world as it seems. See, he's talking about perception. The world is a revelation of the states with which imagination is fused. It is the state from which we think that determines the objective world in which we live. Now, sit in that for a moment, because that's what has to set inside of you if you want to take control here. And here he gives practical examples of people who are living lives as they are living them. In other words, what's happening in the results. He says, the rich man, the poor man, the good man, the thief are what they are by virtue of the states from which they view the world. Now sit in that. The rich man, the poor man, the rich woman, the poor woman, the beggar, the thief. They are that way because of the states from which they view the world. In other words, because of how they perceive things, because of the meanings that they give things. On the distinction between these states depends the distinction between the worlds of these men. Individually, so different is the same world. It is not the actions or behavior of the good man that should be matched, but his point of view. Now, that right there is one of my favorite lines when it comes to when you see someone who's living successful the way that you would love to live yourself, it's not their actions that you must emulate, it's their point of view. It's how they're thinking, it's what they believe to be true. I remember going through this when we were studying with Rami Albatrawi and going through a lot of this. And in his book, he would always talk about the things that he did. And before he would share with people to do this, do that. And then as we went through the study, I was emphasizing this. And then he says, oh my gosh, you're right. Yeah, don't do what I do. Think how I think. Consent to my point of view and believe that things are possible when all the evidence says otherwise. It was such a wonderful thing to see, someone who delivered that kind of success, confirming exactly what was being talked about here. I'm going to say this again. It is not the actions and behavior of the good man that should be matched, but his point of view. Our outer reforms are useless if the inner state is not changed. Success is gained not by imitating the outer actions of the successful, but by right inner actions and right inner talking. Now, notice how he defined and separated the behavioral action versus the mental actions. He's talking about the mental action, how that's what matters most first. And that's really important to get. Wow, it's so good. And that's a wonderful way to start here. Now, before we dive into what we have been studying, make sure you get a copy of this, Secret of the Ages by Robert Collier. This is a beautiful gem. Again, this, what I believe is a beautiful masterpiece, is definitely something that has helped me and something that continues to help me uh, in my life. And I know it's going to do the same for you. All right, so you ready to dive into where we left off with in the PDF that I sent you from quotes that I pulled in from Christian Larson? It's really awesome. Type in the comments, I'm ready if you're ready. You guys ready? Ready to dive into this? Okay, well, let's do this. Let's go into where we left off. And then on Monday, we'll dive into the secret of the ages. Here we go. All right, the greatest remedy. This is on page 29 of the PDF that we supplied to you. The greatest remedy in the world is change. And change implies the passing from the old to the new. It is also the only path that leads from the lesser to the greater, from the dream to the reality, from the wish to the heart's desire fulfilled. Ah, that's beautiful. It is change that brings us everything we want. It is the opposite of change that holds us back from that which we want. You know, this is really cool. In this beautiful gem here, The Secret of the Ages, Robert Collier beautifully emphasizes how important it is to not be passive and static. And the reason for that is because life is not passive and static, life is dynamic. And here, what he's talking about in this matches what Robert Collier was sharing. And it ties to everything that we're sharing with you. For instance, when you look at what we've just read here and you connect with what I just shared with you from Neville, none of that will have any effect in your life if you don't move it around inside. See, it's not going to do good to stay, to have the information and to keep it passive and static. See, it's got to move. See, and that movement is identified as change here from Larson. Now, I'm going to read this again. The greatest remedy in the world is change, and change implies the passing from the old to the new. It is also the only path that leads from the lesser to the greater, from the dream to the reality, from the wish to the heart's desire fulfilled. It is change that brings us everything we want. It is the opposite of change that holds us back from that which we want. But change is not always external. Real change, or rather, the cause of all change, is always internal. Underline that. And isn't that interesting how that's what Neville was emphasizing from what I read to you in Awakened Imagination? Real change, or rather, the cause of all change, is always internal. Temporary change is on the outside. Real change, inside. As within, so without. And that's really important for you to get. It is the change in the within that first produces the change in the without. To go from place to place is not change unless it produces a change of mind, a renewal of mind. It is the change of mind that is the change desired. You got to shift how you're thinking to shift the results of your life. You don't change that, the results don't change. It is the renewal of mind that produces better health. You want better health? Use this line. Let the weak man say, I am strong. I am healthy, not I'm going to be healthy. It is the renewal of mind that produces better health, more happiness, greater power, and the increase of life, and the consequent increase of all that is good in life. And the constant renewal of mind, the daily change of mind, is possible regardless of time, circumstance, or places. Now think about that. Everything that's happening right now, how you have been thinking, is not a fixed condition of things. It can be changed. Now, is it easy to shift from that? No. Why? Because we have what's called paradigms, which are fixed ideas that have roots in us subconsciously, your beliefs, your habits, which is the primal cause for why you're stuck if you're stuck. The whole point is that you can change that. And you can change it at any time, no matter what time it is, right here, right now. Oh, and here's another now. Here's another now. He who can change his mind every day and think the new about everything every day will always be well. He will always have happiness. He will always be free. His life will always be interesting. He will constantly move forward into the larger, the richer, and the better, and whatever is needed for his welfare today, of that he shall surely have abundance. This is where open-mindedness comes into play. This is where reason comes into play. Thinking and adjusting and reevaluating. Not keeping things the same. Remember, there's a law called the perpetual transmutation of energy. And what that law implies and what it states is that everything is always moving. Nothing ever sits still. There's always change. In terms of the change, it's either creation or disintegration. So you got to move because the movement is life. Now, before we dive into what's written down here, for those of you who are watching this live stream and are feeling a beautiful connection with this and would love to tap into more of this live call and to access the replays, then do yourself a favor and go to elevitality.com and register for Master Your Mind. You'll thank yourself later.